Good afternoon, and welcome to this panel session that we're hosting today. My name is Tina Nielsen. I'm the editor of FCSI's Food Service Consultant magazine, and we are talking about fire suppression today. And I've got an expert panel of none other than the FCSI EMI chair, Frank Wagner, and from ANSUL, who's kindly sponsored this panel, Jan Waldov. Is that correct, Waldov?
More or less, yeah.
Yeah, more or less, okay. And we're going to be talking about the test requirements for food service in fire suppression and everything that's new and what's coming up as well, which is quite a lot, so I'm told. So, gentlemen, if we could start with you introducing yourselves first, give us a little bit of information about who you are, what you do.
Yeah, my name is Jan Waldo. I have been working for Johnson Controls or ANSUL fire suppression systems for the last almost 20 years. Have been contributed to writing standards and working across EMEA.
Thank you. Frank?
Oh, I'm Frank Wagner, EMI chair and owning or partner in K3 Kitchen Consultants International. I don't know how to translate it in English. Planungsgesellschaft. I'm doing kitchens since more than 30 years, and we know each other almost 20 years, I would say. So from the beginning, and we work a lot with ANSUL. So I have to confess, because of the requirements of the hotel companies.
Okay, all right, thank you. So Frank, you and we actually did this panel at Host 4 years ago about fire suppression. So I'll be interested to hear if you've got any changes in your perspective or anything that's happened since then. But I think as a starting point, if I could hear from both of you, what are some of the primary concerns within the issue of fire safety and fire suppression within food service, and how has it changed in the last few years? Has there been any changes? What are the kind of the watchwords?
Yeah, I think the primary concern is having kitchen fires, and understanding kitchen fires is a big point. Grease fires, just to give you a figure from the US, it's about 16.9% of the fires happening between midnight and 6 in the morning. So in 25% of the time, you have 16.9% of the fire incidents, which is nothing you would tackle in any manual way. It's most of the time it's unattended cooking, not watching the cooking operation, not monitoring it closely. Fires can happen on all different appliances. That's important to recognize. Every appliance using grease is a potential fire hazard and would need protection. What's changed over the last 4 years is that 4 years ago we had a standard in place, European SAN standard, which is called 16282 Part 7. That's from a series of ventilation standards, and it's dealing with fire protection. It's about the specification. It's built on, you need to have a proper design, you need to have a proper installation, you need to have a proper service, and you need to have hardware. So the first 3 points have been extremely easy to resolve, and it could just be written in the standard, but we needed a test standard, which gives evidence the system has been tested on all different appliances. That test standard has been developed since. It has been published a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. It's called EN 17446, EN 17446, and it's dealing with the test protocols for all different appliances. So if you're passing it, you have a proper hardware.
Okay.
For me, the last changes, I'm happy that we have awareness how dangerous fires in kitchens are. I learned the last 4 years that these blankets, very often used in different parts of the world, are more dangerous and more hurting, more dangerous for people than the fire itself sometimes. And that we are protecting the kitchen stuff with the proper fire system, not buildings only, right? So it's to protect the chefs and everybody who's working in the kitchen is that.
Yeah.
And I learned kitchen fires, how powerful they are. You can destroy whole buildings with 1-2 meter hood and one fryer, right? So that's it. So in my career, 30 years ago, there was a railway station, half destroyed by one brat pan who had a broken thermostat and no fire suppression system.
Yeah.
So the awareness, that's what I think, and we learned in our projects that many of the big hotel chains requested tested systems.
Oh, they did?
Yes.
I was talking to Jan just before the session about how many kitchens actually have fire suppression systems, and I was surprised, as a complete ignorant, I was surprised that it's not something that everybody have. I assumed it was a must-have, but it's not something that people think is going to happen to them, I suppose. So how much of a role as an educator is there in your job, Frank?
No, actually, in Germany, for instance, we just have the rule: if you have a fryer with more than 50 liter fat, then it's mandatory to have.
It's mandatory.
Yeah. So, but the hotel companies, they have we call it insurances for the building, and the insurance is requesting proper protection, and sometimes it's, for instance, Marriott, I think it's a company rule, and they are requesting testing according American norms. So we have 2 norms, American. So that's the only way, because actually we don't build it normally for German projects. But if you're internationally with international course, so you have to do it according UL. He's the one with the numbers. So 300 and another UL. For fixed equipment and mobile equipment and. We just have some fights with companies about that, because we have a lot of mobile or equipment in show kitchens, for instance. Theater kitchen, show kitchen. I don't know the English word. You know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Yeah. So in Germany, it is people are doing the right thing because they have to.
No, actually, the insurance companies are interested not to pay money, so they're requesting that. Fire suppression, protection against fire, to save money. Yeah, so it's the fire always comes when you're not expecting that. Yeah? So
Quite. Yeah.
or when you have no money to.
And well, you never expect a fire, do you? No. So Jan, just taking from what Frank said about Germany, how does that compare to other European countries?
It's different all over Europe. Sometimes there are regulations, sometimes not. What we see is a lot of regulations from chains, restaurant chains, hotel chains. Sometimes it's a public requirement, but it deviates in every direction. So in France, for example, you have to protect if you have a front cooking and a new front cooking and a fryer. That's what you need to protect. If it's existing, you don't need to protect it. What Frank mentioned in Germany is safety at work regulations. So that's where it's coming from. But there is another requirement. If you have corporate canteens or so, it's from an assembly regulation that when you have more than a certain number of people in there and it's open cooking and more than 30 square meters of a kitchen, which is a question if that's really contributing to the fire risk, but then you need to protect. That's another contributor from the German market, and it's different. In the UK, it's insurance driven. The insurances are very strict on it, and this way it can be different either way. And our job is really to make people aware of it, increase awareness, and talk about it, and make the world a little bit safer.
It's protecting people, actually, right? So because people dying, if you ever have seen a fire and I've seen people burned by trying to take out the fire with water.
Put out the fire.
Yeah.
And very bad.
And then another important point is that you have a system not only claiming to put out the fire, you need to have a system where you can be sure it does. And there's huge differences, and that's why it's so important to have these standards in place, setting certain requirements and to really meet the standards and not just claim and say, I have a good friend issuing me a certificate and it will work in some way. I'll give you an example. When UL walked away from testing with a 1 minute pre-burn and started with a 2 minute pre-burn, they found that together with 2 other reasons, they needed 5 times the agent to put out a fire on the fire than before. And that's a huge difference nobody really would expect without knowing it. It's 1 minute more and you need 5 times the agent. Now you can imagine what happens if you don't detect the fire early enough and start the suppression early enough. You run out of agent.
So this standard, the EN 17446, what has driven the push for that then? Is that industry that has come together to say we need a standard, or what's behind it?
Actually, it has been started by the industry. There was a common understanding in the industry that it's needed, and there have been several approaches, and one day it started. We had a template in Spain. So UNE in Spain had a standard called UNE 23510, and that was the template for you don't need
Respect.
to know it. And that was a template for the standard to be developed, but then there was a CEN committee really defining what's required and what's not.
Yeah. And what drives the push for that? Is that because they can see that as a standard is needed, or?
No, from my perspective, I would say that to have a standard gives you, as a user or somebody who needs to be protected, or designer or consultant, a little bit more safety that it really works. Yeah, because in our work we are responsible also not only that you have enough food, but we're also responsible for protecting the people working in kitchens. Yeah, so. And the investment and everything. So, and if you have systems you cannot trust, so that makes it very difficult to be right, especially if you have seen fires. So, and tested, a system or standard that where you can compare and where you are sure that you take out the fire helps a lot. A lot for us as designers and the people in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And your passion is about food and not about fire protection, eh? So it's something making your sleep better.
We don't want to test it.
But we can give you the evidence with a standard, and actually standard has been developed between the industries, and what has been driving it is the existence of 16282 Part 7, which originally has been developed out of an old DIN standard. So it had been around for a longer time in Germany as a quality requirement, and what was needed after having the 16282 Part 7 done was to have something in common which we could use to tell what's needed in terms of hardware testing.
Yeah, okay. And what does it mean for you on a practical level? You now have to put all your equipment through rigorous testing, or?
What it's meaning is we had everything tested and we needed to go through all testing again. And so we have done far beyond 150 tests. It's not just going there and saying, I have tested something somewhat similar before. You need to do every test again. And we actually will be having a European manual. We'll not use our UL manual. We'll have an EN 17446 manual, which is laying out every single tested protection. And I think that's extremely critical for evidence that it has been tested and how it is supposed to be protected. And what we are doing is we are training all our customers doing the installation, so they are familiar with how to install all this, and they get certified on it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, for me, practical reason is not only that you protect things, that you also avoid unnecessary protection. So because sometimes people just scared and put it everywhere, so which is not necessary at the end. Yeah, so that it's also helping a lot. Yeah, saying you don't have to protect everything.
Yeah. And as a consultant, do you have input into the development of these standards, or do you get consulted by the manufacturers? Because clearly you have day-to-day experience of what the real risks are.
No, actually, but we are trusting in this case, our members of FCSI. That's the one who working in ventilation, for instance, or in fire suppression. But mostly the ventilation companies like Vian and Halton. So they have their own interest to get that things done. Yeah. So because fire starts burning on the ground, but then travels through ventilation all the time. Yeah. So and that's the dangerous part. Yeah?
But to the contribution to the development of the standard, and mainly to the 16282, has been provided from different areas. So there have been ventilation companies contributing to it. There is safety at work, people contributing to it. There are HVAC consultants contributing to it. So it's really connected in every direction, and it's covering all the requirements and not only looking at fire protection.
Yeah, in Germany, for instance, that's I don't know how to translate it. That's the organization that protects the stuff in the kitchen. So that needs you have to provide a certain safety on the where you work. Yeah, so that's the reason why I have so many norms. Yeah, tables and chairs, and so it's temperature and ventilation and fire protection at the end. Yeah.
Okay. It strikes me as it's a very global world that you operate in. It must be quite difficult to deal with a market where there's different standards for different countries. Jan, you told me before that we shouldn't be saying anything about harmonization, but there must be a case for harmonizing the standards somehow. It makes it easier to work, doesn't it?
So my concern about saying harmonization is that it is a legal term in standardization business, and we don't want to have that confused. But of course, we need to have a lot of harmony between different requirements. And I think that's covered. We also offer other standards. So this is for Europe. It's 28, 29 companies participating in SENS standards. But we also have our systems tested to other local standards. We have the UL 300, which has been our dominating standard for a long, long time. And it will remain to be extremely important for our global business. We have British testing LPS 1223. We have something from Belgium. We have something from France. We have something from Hungary and from I don't know where. There is an overview, and it's many different requirements. But at the end of the day, it always comes down to the same designs to protect. And if you go to France, French people are happy if they see CNPP. And that will remain a French requirement on top of the EN 17446 and the 16282 being around.
Yeah.
For us, I think all these numbers I don't know. Yeah, so he's the expert on that. We had UL 300 or so. That's what I learned it from him. From so I never heard that before. So, but for us, is very important is that. All these companies doing that, following the standards, and have the requirements, have everything tested, but they need to have I call it trained staff who is installing that. Yeah?
Staff.
So
Okay.
the employees who is installing the fire suppression system in local areas. You have a good system, but you have the wrong
Nozzles.
the wrong nozzles, then it protects nothing. Yeah, so you need to have qualified staff. Because, I remember, so we had a project in Netherlands, so where I had to put photos on every these nozzles and said something is wrong. So it was completely wrong installed. Yeah, so we need to have not only standardization, blah, 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 but we need to have in every country trained installers.
Installation
So that's-
engineers. Okay.
It's the fire protection systems. So it either comes with the ventilation companies ready installed, or somebody in the country needs to install it. But if they have no idea what they're doing,
Yeah.
it's very difficult.
Actually, it's requirements from the first standard mentioned from the 16282 that you need to have trained or factory trained and certified engineers, not just companies, engineers. It's not this game, somebody in the company has a driving license, everybody's driving the car. It's every engineer touching the system in a responsible way needs to be trained and certified. And they need to have, and that's also EN requirements, they need to have an ID card, or it's recommended to have an ID card to provide evidence and the certificate, and the engineer needs to know what it does and what he does, and not somebody in the company. And the design check has to be carried out during every service, checking if it's still okay. And if not, it needs to be adjusted.
And we, hello. And we now, asking Jan or other, for even the other companies to check what the installer has done. Yeah. So because since that time we were a little bit scared that they have done something wrong. I don't know which nozzles are for what. So it's not what I'm doing, yeah, but I want to be sure that every chef is working there get not hurt because of a wrong nozzle.
Yeah.
Yeah, a fire starts and then kills the people, but it helps nobody, yeah.
And that's what the intent behind the standards is, and behind training people, and that you have the safety you need, because we do not expect kitchen designers to dig into it and to have to become experts in fire protection. But I think for Frank it's important to know where he can go and will find experts, and that's obvious by the ID card and by the certification.
Or have qualified companies that are certified by the manufacturer, for instance. They're all coming together with the ventilation hoods, but not somebody who knows somebody that can and heard something about.
So this standard, for example, it came into force. What did you say, a year ago? How long ago has it been in place?
The 16282 as initial standard has been published, I believe, in April 2017.
Okay, and the
And
17446?
6 has been early in 22.
Okay.
I don't know if it has been February or March or whatever. It's delayed because the standard got published and it's, let's say, active and applicable, but the manufacturers have to do the testing, and that takes a long time.
I was going
And
to.
it's a big effort, and that's why it's not immediately available. That's why it's not immediately available. And yeah, we are almost ready. We wanted to show it here. Is a tiny bit missing. That's why it's not displayed. But I think I'm fine to say we will have it very soon.
So is that quite a big exercise then, to train, to make sure that everybody is trained to know about it?
The training we have done in the past 1.5 years or so will be good, as well as it is good for the UL and the LPS 1223. It will also be good for the EN 17446 manual.
Yeah. Okay.
It's pretty much the same, and we'll need to point at 2 or 3 points, but it is for the installation company, it's not so different.
And how much does this area change? Is there likely to be an update to the standard in 2 years? Or is this it now? Are you happy? Are you saying we're happy now and we move on? Or will this be a live standard?
I hope we will be saying we are happy now. It's always a big effort. Nevertheless, I'm pretty sure there will be the one or the other comment, and perhaps there's a new appliance at some day which we need to cover, and the new test we need to do, or sometime we find a more economic way, requiring less agents. So I think there will be updates mainly to how we protect. The standard, I believe, will be pretty much what it is at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. And what about you, Frank? Are you happy, or do you look at it and think it could be better, or it needs changing, or?
You know, I'm happy. So if we have, I call it a standard we can trust. Yeah, because not, that's the main reason. It trusts and it works at the end. So it's a long process to change standards. I agree, but sometimes science find new ways to handle fire, right? Like water mist or something. Nobody expected that. Or you have requirements where you have a heritage building where you cannot use some chemicals. Yeah, so that's a big issue sometimes.
Yeah.
So, and if all companies would say, "Oh, we are happy now," then we could not have kitchens in old castles, for instance. Yeah, so we have to deal with these outside standard things too, and make it standards later, maybe. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. And just maybe to finish off now, Jan, if you look ahead to the future, where do you think this could go in terms of the industry attitudes to the issue? Will the standard help to really drum it home to people that is necessary?
I think it needs to be recognized with the end users, with the insurances, and a lot of information needs to be provided for that. And it's a mutual effort, I would say, between everybody producing quality systems to go out and to communicate it. The market is not developed today, and the biggest exercise in front of us is to develop the market in terms of informing people and spreading the message, and make sure no scrap systems would be accepted in the market, which has, in some countries, it's very different country by country, but no scrap technology is accepted in any way, and that's what the main target for this standard is.
Okay, all right. Frank?
For the future, I would agree on that we have to, advertise, shout out, bring out the message into the market that kitchen should be a safe working environment, safe for the chefs, safe for waiters, so and they not accidentally get killed or hit by a fire suppression system or fire. So that is very necessary. So from FCSI, so we are starting an initiative, protect the chef in kitchens, because we have big issues with ventilation sometimes, we have big issues with fire, with stress, what really kills chefs. So that if we know that, we have to do something against that. And we have many of these government organizations helping us, many ventilation companies helping us. We have fire suppression systems helping us to protect chefs. Yeah, so in the end, they just work. Yeah, so that's a big thing.
Brilliant. And on that excellent note, we can open the floor to questions. If there are any questions from the audience. Mike?
Frank, I guess it's a question about design. As fire suppression equipment and technology evolves, what kind of impact does that have on how you and design consultants are designing kitchens? Does it change anything at all? Is it impacting on design?
No, actually, it doesn't change. You just respect the space you need for that you don't have problems later with heights but it doesn't have an effect, because cooking does not change. Yeah, so to heat water you have to bring heat. Yeah, so boil water needs something. So and the same is with fat or steak or so. Nobody can cook without fire. So that's what we said in the past. Yeah? So but we have to contain, or we have to protect just the people, the risk. And this time is not following regulations and laws, is do a little bit more if it is possible. Yeah. So.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Good afternoon. This is George Haddad from Limnisanza. We are a kitchen designer, and we are mainly operating in GCC. So mainly in GCC, the government is imposing the system to be there, and then the civil defense must check the system. If the system is not there, they will not give them the license to operate. However, our concern in this area is like your agents are not well trained, and how do you follow up with them to make sure that they are doing well? And when we have a site supervision, we are really concerned because they are doing it, the kitchen contractor is doing it, and he's not supposed to do it. Let's say in Qatar, you have someone, a special someone, like under Ansel name. Even though he's changing always his team, and lately we've been facing a lot of issues with them. And the latest one was in the airport. Like they were supposed to fill the chemicals bottle, and then an accident happened at night. An induction wok has burned off due to some electrical fluctuation, and the system struggled, and without a chemical. So we found out that the bottles are empty at the end. And then now we have in Red Sea similar projects where the kitchen contractor is claiming that he's able to do the testing and commissioning, which is very worrying.
Thank you. That's exactly my concern. Yeah. So if you don't train your people on site, we have the problem later.
It's a big risk because we will be playing at the end. And then the only testing and commissioning that we do is using the balloons with the air. That how can we test the automatic trigger? We cannot do that as well.
If somebody touches the system who hasn't installed it, it's a question of liability who has touched it last. What we do is we make it mandatory for everybody we are supplying that they have trained engineers. So there should always be a trained engineer around, and we can provide names and companies. We can always check if the guys have been trained. That's calling us, asking for it. They would have a certificate plus an ID card. What's used in Europe is also applicable in the Middle East. That's no problem at all. And at the end of the day, it needs to be checked on site. If those people, it's in photo ID with a name on it, and if somebody wants to play wrong, there's always ways to playing wrong. But we are making sure people get training and provide means to check if they have been trained.
Yeah, but the problem is the kitchen companies, the kitchen suppliers, they coming with ready-built Vian and Oud fire suppression system in it, and they just install it wrong. So that's the problem we have. And then we call, and I do that. I call then this is saying that's the answer system. Do you have somebody here? I said no, we have somebody here. Then I get concerned. Yeah, so that's the main problem is how to control the installation, make sure that there's a quality. Yeah.
What we are providing is we are auditing our distributors, so it's voluntarily, but they can participate in an auditing program where we would assess installations and provide a rating on them. So you get in a position that you can differentiate on the quality we have found with them.
Is there any way you can share that distributor list on your website or somewhere so we can go and check if it's listed, trained, or...
We can provide information on that, and I have 2 or 3 colleagues sitting here who can take a note and we can pick it up. You can also come, our stand is just behind there, the next aisle, C62 in this hall, and we can provide more detail on it. Something else we do on demand, and it always needs to be reasonable with the cost. But we do auditing systems, independent auditing, where we have an auditing team and they go out and they check installations. They won't disassemble the system, but they will do an external check of the system and check if all the parameters have been followed. That's something that has to be demanded, and it's always subject to cost, because just traveling somewhere and doing an audit is expensive, so it needs to be checked. But it is available.
Excellent. Anything else? Any other questions? No? Okay, well, in that case, thanks very much, Frank. Thanks, Jan, and thanks to Ansel for this session. And thanks to you for coming to watch. Have a good afternoon.